I mean this in the nicest way possible. You've got to tune out the noise. This is I Mean This in the Nicest Way Possible, and I'm your host, Richard Armand Mills. There was a period of my life where checking the news felt like a civic duty. Not once a day, not even a few times a day. Constantly. Scrolling through Twitter like my life depended on it. Because the news always seems to drop on there first. Also, when you work in politics as I used to, this kind of hyper-focus is treated like responsibility. Like awareness. Like if you stop watching, you stop caring. But here's what it actually did to me. It hijacked my mood. It drained my energy. It made my nervous system feel like it was permanently braced for impact. I could wake up in a perfectly fine mood, and within minutes of scrolling through the latest trending topics, I'd feel irritated, anxious, or just heavy. And the wild part, nothing in my actual day-to-day life had changed. The stress wasn't coming from something happening to me. It was coming from something happening to my attention. And I still see this everywhere. Friends who are doing well until a headline scrolls by and ruins the room. Families who keep the news on all day like background radiation. People who feel morally obligated to stay upset about things they have zero control over and no plan to act on. That's not engagement. That's emotional self-harm dressed up as virtue. Let me be clear. This is not about not caring. It's about caring in a way that doesn't destroy your peace. Because unless you're actively organizing, donating, legislating, or building solutions, sitting in a constant state of outrage isn't helping anyone. It's just exhausting you. And exhausted people are not effective, grounded, or present. Nor does their skin look that great. Modern media thrives on urgency, fear, and division. Negative headlines sell. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. And if you don't consciously decide how much access it gets to your mind, it will take as much as you'll give. This episode is about why tuning out the noise isn't irresponsible, it's necessary. How to stay informed without being consumed. And why protecting your mental and emotional bandwidth might be one of the healthiest choices you can make right now. Constant exposure to negative news doesn't just inform you. It trains your nervous system to stay on high alert. When your brain is repeatedly fed stories centered on threat, conflict, and catastrophe, it starts treating the world as inherently unsafe, even when your immediate environment is stable. This is why people can feel anxious, irritable, or hopeless without being able to point to anything actually wrong in their personal lives. Psychologists often refer to this as mean world syndrome. The more negative media you consume, the more dangerous and hostile you believe the world to be. Over time, this perception shapes mood, behavior, and even physical health. Chronic stress responses like elevated cortisol, muscle tension, and fatigue become normalized. You're not reacting to lived experience anymore. You're reacting to a stream of worst-case scenarios curated for maximum emotional impact. Research from Psychology Today has shown that excessive news consumption is associated with higher levels of anxiety, rumination, and emotional exhaustion, particularly when people feel powerless to influence the outcomes they're watching unfold. That sense of helplessness is key. The brain is wired to problem solve. When it's presented with endless problems and no path to action, it doesn't become more compassionate. It becomes overwhelmed. This is where the cycle turns unhealthy. People begin checking the news compulsively, not because it helps, but because their nervous system is already activated and seeking resolution. The habit starts to resemble emotional doom scrolling, a loop of distress, checking, distress again. Rather than feeling informed, people feel dysregulated. What makes this especially insidious is how socially reinforced it is. Staying glued to the news is often framed as being aware, responsible, or on the right side of history. But awareness without boundaries doesn't build resilience. It erodes it. Being informed should expand your capacity to engage with life, not shrink it. When consuming the news consistently leaves you tense, angry, or depleted, that's not moral superiority. That's a nervous system asking for relief. Modern news media doesn't just report reality. It curates emotional reactions. Outrage, fear, and moral panic reliably capture attention. And attention is the currency that drives clicks, ratings, and ad revenue. That incentive structure quietly shapes what gets amplified and how it's framed. Calm, nuanced information doesn't hold people as long as conflict does, so conflict becomes the product. From a psychological standpoint, this taps directly into negativity bias, the brain's tendency to prioritize threatening information over neutral or positive input. Evolutionarily, this made sense. Paying attention to danger kept people alive. But in a 24-hour news cycle, that same bias is constantly exploited. Headlines framed around danger and division feel more urgent, more clickable, and harder to ignore. Research summarized by Psychology Today shows that emotionally charged news increases engagement, but also heightens stress and emotional polarization. This design doesn't just exhaust individuals, it fractures communities. When stories are framed in rigid us versus them terms, empathy narrows. People stop listening and start defending identities. Conversations become reactive instead of thoughtful. The result isn't informed civic engagement. It's emotional tribalism, where being right matters more than understanding. Health experts at the Cleveland Clinic have warned that repeated exposure to divisive or catastrophic news can intensify anxiety and anger, especially when the coverage lacks resolution or actionable outcomes. The nervous system stays activated, but there's nowhere for that energy to go to. Over time, this can lead to emotional burnout and social withdrawal. What's often overlooked is how passive this process is. You don't have to seek out outrage to absorb it. It arrives through TVs and waiting rooms, push notifications, social media feeds, and background noise. The constant drip of breaking crises creates a sense that everything is urgent all the time, even when nothing requires your immediate action. This doesn't make people more informed. It makes them more reactive. And reactivity is easy to manipulate. For many people, consuming negative news isn't a conscious choice. It's a habit loop. Exposure triggers emotional arousal. Arousal creates a sense of urgency, and urgency reinforces the impulse to keep checking. Even when the content is upsetting, the brain interprets the stimulation as important, which makes disengagement feel irresponsible or unsafe. Neuroscience research has shown that emotionally charged information, especially fear-based or morally provocative content, activates the brain's reward and stress systems at the same time. This combination can create compulsive checking behavior similar to other forms of behavioral addiction. The mind keeps scanning for updates, not because they help, but because uncertainty feels worse than distress. This is where the illusion of staying informed becomes slippery. Constant exposure rarely leads to deeper understanding. Instead, it fragments attention. People report increased irritability, pessimism, and emotional fatigue. Not because the world suddenly became unbearable, but because their brains were never allowed to rest. The problem intensifies when news consumption becomes identity-based. Some people feel morally obligated to remain plugged in at all times, equating disengagement with apathy or ignorance. But research highlighted by the Greater Good Science Center suggests that chronic stress reduces empathy and problem-solving capacity. In other words, the more overwhelmed someone becomes, the less effective they are at caring meaningfully or acting constructively. There's also a social reinforcement layer. Group chats, social media feeds, and shared outrage can make disengagement feel like social withdrawal. When everyone is reacting together, opting out can feel isolating, even when staying in is emotionally draining. What's rarely acknowledged is that most news consumption does not lead to action. It leads to rumination. Without clear outlets like donating, volunteering, organizing, and voting, emotional energy turns inward and stagnates. The body absorbs the stress while the situation remains unchanged. There is a critical difference between caring about the world and absorbing the world's distress as if it were a personal responsibility. Healthy concern motivates values-aligned action. Unfiltered absorption overwhelms the nervous system and quietly erodes well-being. Many people get stuck in this cycle because they believe that feeling worse means caring more. In reality, excessive emotional immersion can reduce empathy over time. The Cleveland Clinic has noted that prolonged exposure to distressing information elevates cortisol levels, disrupts sleep, and impairs emotional regulation. When stress becomes the baseline, the capacity to respond thoughtfully shrinks. Caring in a healthy way requires boundaries. Boundaries that recognize that staying informed does not require constant exposure. And boundaries that also acknowledge scale. A single person cannot carry the emotional weight of every global crisis without consequence. Caring responsibly means choosing when to engage, how to engage, and what action, if any, follows. There's also a false moral hierarchy embedded in nonstop awareness. People often internalize the idea that if they are not distressed, they are detached. But emotional stability does not equal indifference. In fact, grounded individuals are more capable of making sustained contributions, whether through charitable efforts, community work, creative output, or interpersonal care. Distance does not erase values. It protects them. When engagement is intentional rather than compulsive, concern becomes clearer and more humane. Instead of reacting to every headline, people can decide where their energy is genuinely useful. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to care in a way that does not require self-sacrifice as proof. And you can actually see this play out in real life with public figures who've had to set boundaries around attention. Look at Billie Eilish. She's talked about limiting what she consumes online and being intentional about her exposure, because constant input was affecting how she felt, how she saw herself, and how she moved through the world. Creating distance wasn't disconnecting. It was protecting her mental state. Even someone like Zendaya keeps a very controlled relationship with media. She's not reacting to everything in real time. She's selective, contained, and because of that, she stays grounded. And that's the point. Boundaries around input don't make you disconnected. They make you stable enough to stay present in your actual life. Stepping away from constant news consumption wasn't about becoming uninformed. It was about becoming regulated. For a long time, attention felt like a civic duty. Staying plugged in felt responsible. But over time, it became clear that the cost was internal stability. My body was tense. My mind was crowded. And my baseline mood was reactive. What works now is intentional distance. That starts with strict boundaries around when and how information is consumed. News is no longer background noise. It's not on all day. It's not the first thing in the morning or the last thing at night. Starting the morning with breaking news trains the nervous system to wake up in threat mode. Ending the night with it disrupts rest. Neither improves understanding, neither improves outcomes, and both fuck up your day and night and sleep. Instead, I access information deliberately, in contained windows, and then release it. Another shift was separating awareness from immersion. It's possible to know what's happening in the world without emotionally living inside it. Skimming headlines once a day provides context without hijacking the nervous system. Deep dives are reserved for topics that actually intersect with my values, work, or tangible action, not everything that demands outrage. There was also a necessary unlearning around guilt. Caring does not require suffering. Stress is not a prerequisite for compassion. Being emotionally wrecked by every headline doesn't make anyone more ethical. It just makes them depleted. Integrity isn't measured by how upset someone is. It's reflected in how thoughtfully someone lives. The biggest change came from reclaiming attention for things that restore rather than drain. Reading books instead of doom scrolling. Spending time with people instead of panels of talking heads. Creating instead of reacting. Eventually, attention became a resource again, not something constantly extracted. What's notable is how clarity returned once the noise softened. Decision-making improved. Emotional reactions slowed. Conversations became more grounded. Without constant external agitation, it became easier to think independently instead of being pulled into manufactured urgency. Another part of what works is redefining what caring actually means. For a long time, caring was conflated with constant exposure, knowing every update, tracking every escalation, absorbing every tragic detail as if proximity created responsibility. But that version of caring didn't lead to action. It led to fatigue. What's healthier is selective engagement. That means being honest about capacity. There are global issues that matter deeply, but not all of them require daily emotional labor. Attention is finite, and spreading it thin across every crisis leaves nothing left for the places where influence is real. Action replaced obsession. Instead of repeatedly consuming distressing content, care is expressed through specific behaviors. Donating when possible, supporting organizations aligned with my values, and showing up locally where help makes a difference. This creates a sense of contribution without emotional overload. It turns concern into something tangible rather than circular. Another shift was resisting the pull of performative outrage. Not every issue requires commentary. Silence isn't apathy, it's discernment. There's freedom in opting out of constant opinion production, especially when it's driven by algorithms rather than conviction. There's also a clearer distinction now between empathy and emotional fusion. Empathy allows compassion without collapse. Emotional fusion happens when someone else's crisis becomes an internal emergency. The latter erodes resilience over time. Maintaining boundaries around emotional intake protects the ability to stay present and supportive in real relationships. Limiting exposure also made room for joy, something often framed as inappropriate during difficult times. But joy isn't betrayal, it's fuel. Enjoyment of life doesn't negate awareness of suffering. It strengthens the capacity to respond when response actually matters. Caring from a distance also reduced polarization. Constant exposure to divisive framing trains the brain to sort the world into enemies and allies. Stepping back softens that reflex. It becomes easier to see nuance, complexity, and humanity without immediately being pulled into sides. Peaceful doesn't mean passive, it means regulated. There's also clarity in accepting limits. No one person is meant to carry the weight of the world's pain. Absorbing suffering without agency doesn't make it disappear, it multiplies it internally. Letting go of that burden is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. And what remains is a quieter, more deliberate engagement with reality. Less noise, more intention, awareness that informs rather than overwhelms. Attention used as a resource, not surrendered as a sacrifice. Choosing peace doesn't mean opting out of the world. It means refusing to let chaos dictate inner life. Now for this week's challenge. I'm calling it the No News, No Problem Challenge. For the next 7 days, this is the experiment. Choose one intentional boundary around how you consume the news. Not forever, not dramatically, just deliberately. Here's what that looks like. Try going without breaking news before noon. Let your nervous system wake up without being hijacked by crisis energy. Pick one check-in window per day, 15 or 30 minutes max. No scrolling headlines all day, no doom refreshing, and no news as background noise. If it's on, it's intentional. If it's not intentional, it's off. Then, as the week unfolds, notice what replaces it. More focus, a better mood, less tension in your body, More patience with the people around you? At the end of the week, ask yourself one honest question. Did being less informed in real time actually make me less capable? Or did it make me more regulated, present, and grounded? This is not about ignorance. It's about protecting your attention so it can be used where it actually matters. Because when you stop feeding chaos all day, you don't stop caring. You just stop bleeding energy into places you can't control. And that is a powerful choice. Caring about the world does not require sacrificing your peace. Being informed does not mean being inundated. And staying conscious does not mean staying constantly agitated. There's a difference between awareness and overwhelm. One sharpens you, the other drains you. The truth is, a nervous system that's constantly flooded with crisis is not more compassionate. It's just more exhausted. And exhaustion doesn't lead to action, clarity, or change. It leads to burnout, numbness, and quiet despair. Tuning out the noise isn't apathy. It's discernment. It's deciding that your attention is finite, that your emotional energy is valuable, and that you don't need to consume every headline in real time to prove that you care. You can stay engaged without being engulfed. You can be socially aware without being emotionally hijacked. You can care deeply and still protect your day-to-day life. When you choose to step back from constant outrage, something important happens. You become more grounded, more present, more capable of directing your care where it actually has impact. In your relationships, your work, your community, and your own well-being. That's not disengagement. That's maturity. Season 2 of this show is about honoring yourself in the real world. About recognizing where systems benefit from your stress and where you don't have to participate. You're allowed to turn the volume down. You're allowed to opt out of the constant churn. And you're allowed to live a life that isn't dictated by the loudest, angriest voices in the room. Because the kindest thing you can do is be real. Real about what you can control. Real about what you can't. And real about what deserves your attention. I'm Ram, and thanks for getting real with me today. You just finished listening to I Mean This in the Nicest Way Possible. Written and produced by Richard Armand Mills.